Hi, everybody. In this class, we are going to talk about how World War II became a global war in 1941. We are going to talk about Japan. Well, in the 1930s, Japan was the most powerful country in Asia, especially in the Far East. It was the first Asiatic country to develop modern industries and to equip armed forces with state-of-the-art weapons. If you remember, in 1931 we said that Japan had invaded Manchuria, a region in China, but in 1937 Japan decided to invade the whole China. So Japan made an alliance with Germany and Italy. Japan recognized German and Italian superiority in Europe, and obviously Germany and Italy did the same with Japan in Asia. This meant that Japan compromised not to intervene in the European war, and it was all the other way around with Germany and Italy with Japan in Asia. The United States obviously was worried about this situation, about how Japan was becoming more and more powerful. So the President Roosevelt decided that Japan had to be checked before becoming too powerful. In 1941, the United States stopped American oil supplies to Japan because Japan needed oil to keep on fighting with China to obviously to produce more weapons in their industries. And Roosevelt persuaded Great Britain and Holland to do the same with Japan, that is to say, to stop the supplies of oil to the Asiatic country. So Japan couldn't fight China. How was Japan going to keep on fighting China without oil? So, one of the reasons why the war became a global war in 1941 was this fact, that is to say, the stop of oil supply to Japan. In that year, in 1941, the two great wars, that is to say, the European War and the war between Japan and China, merged in only one. Why? What happened? On December the 7th, 1941, these two wars merged in only one because of the Pearl Harbor attack. What was the Pearl Harbor attack? The Pearl Harbor was an attack carried out by Japan over the United States fleet, which was in Pearl Harbor in the west of Hawaii in Honolulu. Japanese planes bombed the naval base of Pearl Harbor. 250 planes, 20 vessels were destroyed, and more than 3,000 people, approximately 3,200 people, died. A few hours later, Japan declared war on the USA and Great Britain, and obviously the United States declared war on Japan. That is why these two wars merged in only one. The declaration of war by the United States on Japan was followed by Latin American countries, but only Brazil and Mexico sent troops. What was the problem with Japan? Why was Japan so powerful and dangerous? First of all, as I told you before, because it had modern weapons, and also Japan with Admiral Yamamoto had developed new tactics to fight on the sea. What were these tactics? These tactics came with the aircraft carrier. Fleets would not longer pound one another from distances of 20 kilometers with big guns, but from distances of hundreds and hundreds of kilometers with bombs and torpedoes dropped from planes. So these new tactics developed by Admiral Yamamoto made Japan very dangerous, because as Germany had developed new tactics on land, Japan had developed new tactics on sea. And also, Japanese people were extremely dangerous in war. Why? Because they thought their emperor was a kind of god and they were ready to die for their country. That is why Japan developed the kamikaze pilots that I will explain later. So, the success at Pearl Harbor gave the Japanese the command of the sea. But which were the reasons for this attack? I told you the first reason was the stop of oil supplies by the United States, Great Britain, and Holland. But obviously, there were some other factors. It is important to say that this attack hadn't been warned. That is to say, the Japanese government didn't warn the United States about this attack. Even Hitler didn't know anything about it. He didn't know about the Japanese attack. Obviously, he would have much preferred that Japan attack Russia and not obviously the United States. But remember the alliance they had signed by which the Japanese government was not going to intervene in the European war. But all the same, although the United States remained neutral until 1941, there was rivalry between Germany and the United States. For example, Hitler sent agents to South America to, that is to say, to fight ideologically against the United States. How did he do this? He sent agents to South America to promote fascism and to show that fascism was more, I would say, it had more benefits than democracy, the democracy of the United States. He also maintained a huge fleet. When I say he, I'm talking about Hitler, maintained a huge fleet of U-boats, the famous U-boats produced by the German government for the German Navy, to prey upon the United States commerce. 6 months before Pearl Harbor, one of German's U-boats sank the Robin Moore, an American freighter. Another important aspect to take into account the reasons why the United States, or why Japan attacked the United States, was that the American country abandoned his policy of neutrality in 1940 when President Roosevelt arranged to exchange 50 American destroyers for naval air bases of British possessions in Western Hemisphere. Also, in 1941, the United States began convoying American freighters part way across the Atlantic. So, also that Japan wanted to conquer an empire in the Southwest Pacific. So, in order to keep on fighting the war against China, they needed oil, but they also looked for tin and rubber of Malaya, and as they didn't have more oil supplies, they looked at the Netherlands Indies. They needed oil from the Netherlands Indies to fight against China. The conquest of these territories antagonized, obviously, with the interest of the United States for raw material. As I told you, the United States was worried about this Japanese growth, and after Pearl Harbor, with this successful operation, that success at Pearl Harbor gave the Japanese the command of the sea. For example, they conquered the Philippines, which was an American possession, Hong Kong, British possessions, Malaya, also property of the British government, and Burma in India, which as well was a British colony. They also captured the Dutch East Indies for the oil fields, as I told you, only in 6 months with just 50,000 loss. So, Australia was Japanese next victim. It looked as if they would sweep over the Indian Ocean as they had the Pacific and join hands with Germany. But what happened? when the Japanese government analyzed this situation of invading Australia, they realized that they couldn't do that. Why? Because remember that Japanese was involved in a war with China. So most Japanese army was needed in China. And Japan didn't have the necessary men to conquer any more lands. The United States obviously was or had been caught surprised with this attack on Pearl Harbor and was quite unprepared for war. But as the United States was the richest country in the world at that time, because the American economy had boomed because of World War II, she made weapons faster than any other country. So Japan and Germany were soon to feel the United States strength with two important battles. In 1942, remember that in 1942 the European war was fought in Russia with Hitler's invasion and Operation Barbarossa. We studied the Operation Barbarossa, we studied the Battle of Stalingrad and the Battle of Kursk. So in 1942 on Midway Island, two important battles were carried out. They were the Coral Sea and the Midway battles, in which the Americans defeated Admiral Yamamoto and prevented Japan from capturing Australia for Japan. The Americans started the offensive campaign with Admiral Himitz on the sea and General MacArthur on land, and they converged on the Philippines. Remember that the Philippines had been invaded and had been conquered by the Japanese. So they converged on the Philippines, and there the greatest naval battle in history was fought. It was the Battle of the Leyte Gulf, in which the United States plus Australia fought against Japan. The results were obvious because the Americans defeated the Japanese, although the Japanese used the kamikaze pilots. Remember, they were absolutely ready to die for their country, the Japanese, and the kamikaze pilots were those kind of pilots that used their planes and committed suicide in order to save Japan from the American possession. So these kamikaze pilots were suicide, but that was not enough. Americans were able to invade Japan, and we will see in our future classes how they decided to drop atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. But this is going to be in our future class. See you. Bye bye.